بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وأصحابه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Dear respected brothers, elders and sisters, welcome back to our weekly class of A Day in the Life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, where we will be looking into the etiquettes and the habits and the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Last week we were looking into the etiquettes and the habits and the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam with regards to eating, dining and anything related to that. Just as a reminder for those who are not here today, the book that we're studying is called Ash-Shamail Kubra. It's one of the many Shamail books. One of the early recordings of a Shamail is one of the 6 authentic books of this Jami' Tirmizi. At the end of it, you'll find a section called Shamail, where it mentions the description of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Inshallah, when we come, as we progress, we'll be covering different aspects of the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and then towards the end, where the description of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam will be mentioned. Before we start, just a reminder that we rectify our intentions while we're here. Firstly, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Secondly, to create the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam by following his sunnah, and also to create the zeal within ourselves to study the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. This was the main reason, 2 reasons why I started this book, to start implementing the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam in life, and to start studying his blessed life as well. Before we move on from where we left from yesterday, just to create, get our attentions going, I'd like to pose a question that how do you think Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam will recognize you and I on the Day of Judgment? It's one thing he will recognize the ashab, his companions, because he's met them. But you and I, we've not seen Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, but we'll ultimately recognize him on the Day of Judgment, because every prophet will be interceding for his respective ummah. So we'll naturally recognize Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Even the disbelievers will recognize Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But how do you think that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam will recognize us? Just put your hands up or shout out, it's fine. If sisters have the answer, just send a message to the ISOC members, team members. Yes?
Is it from the amount of wudu you've done?
That is one of them, mashallah. Good. Anything else? What are you going to say?
The Marcus Sajda?
Yeah. So, one of the narrations mentions that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam will recognize his ummah from the nur, the celestial light that will emanate from those limbs that we wash from wudu. That's why I was mentioning, and I think it was last week's lesson or the week before, that get into the habit of doing wudu. As soon as you wake up in the morning, when we're brushing our teeth, if you're having a shower, then all those limbs are washed anyway. You just need to make intention of wudu. So we got the reward, and 24/7 will be in that state. Another reason the ulama mentions that how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will recognize us is through the nur that emanates as a result of practicing sunnah. As I mentioned last time, that the sunnah emanates nur, and the sunnah is a shield, it's a protection. So when a person is habitual of practicing the sunnah, the nur of the sunnah will be the recognizing identity of an ummati, of a follower of Rasulullah, and Rasulullah will recognize us. And there's also mentioned, scholars mention that there will be cases, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from those people, where Rasulullah will turn his face away from certain individuals of his ummah, because he will not recognize them because they weren't habitual of the sunnah. This is how important sunnah is. It's not just for us to implement in our day-to-day lives in this world, but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will recognize us on the Day of Judgment because of the nur that emanates from the sunnah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq. Inshallah, we'll carry on. So, last week we started the etiquettes of eating and the sunnahs of eating. This week what I'll do is, there's so many narrations, I'm going to not go through the ones that are quite repetitive or the ones that are not so relevant in here, so that we can progress on to the next chapter. Next subheading, eating with the right hand. Sayyidina Umar ibn Salama radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam told him, take the name of Allah, eat with the right hand, and eat the food that is directly in front of you. Take the name of Allah, eat with the right hand, and eat the food that is directly in front of you. We covered the latter part of this narration, that is mentioned in this narration with regards to eating with food that's directly in front of us. That is, if the items that are on the sufra, on the dastahan, on the dining cloth is one and the same, then you should eat from. Or if we're sharing a plate with somebody, which is so much recommended, ulama mentioned that it creates love between two people. That's why when you guys sit down to dine, try to share plates. And also the ulama say that to create more love between husband and wife, the ulama used to say that implement the sunnah and the akhlaq of the Prophet that they used to dine from the same utensil. But obviously if it's a big plate or a tal that has, or the sufra, or the dining cloth has various items, then you can obviously pick and choose whatever you like. Shaitan eats with the left hand. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhuma narrates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, none of you should eat or drink with the left hand as Shaitan does so. None of you should eat or drink with the left hand as Shaitan does so. Often we have the habit of eating with the right hand, that's fine, mashallah. But a lot of the time I've noticed people drinking with the left. Or they'll do this where they'll grab the cup with their left and then they'll take support with the right. Even that is against sunnah. Why? Because the instruction of Rasulullah is to hold the cup or to drink with the right. So ulama mentioned even that taking support is not in accordance to sunnah, even like this. I remember I was at an invitation once and somebody was doing this, so I corrected them. They were my elderly, but I just felt like I had to tell them. And they said, the cup will stain. And I said, look, they're going to wash the cup regardless anyway, whether you stain it or not. After you've drunk from it, they're going to wash it naturally. So it's not the plate is stained. Have you not thought about the plate as well? So he goes, this is not sufficient. So actually is, even if our fingers are stained with curry or whatever we're eating, we're actually meant to hold the cup with the right. So doing this and doing that, doing this or doing that is not sufficient. To grasp it with our right hand is the actual method of sunnah. So please keep that in mind. Al-Mu'mineen Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala relates that Shaitan shares in the meal of the person who eats or drinks with the left hand. We'll move on. Some of the narrations are repetitive. Next hadith, harms of eating from the center. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma says that barakah descends in the center of the utensil. Therefore, eat from the edges of the plate, not the center. What that means is that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts barakah in the food, it descends in the center, and then the barakah sort of starts spreading into the meal. So we move outwards, from outwards in. So don't start going directly into it. Again, it's also part of, a lot of the things is also etiquette as well. It's like dining in a very sensible manner, not being messy. So a lot of the things is common sense, but also, look, this is how particular Islam is, our religion is. There's etiquettes to everything. Cleaning the utensil. Sayyidina Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam commanded that the fingers should be licked and the utensil should be cleaned, i.e. before washing it. Expounding the benefit of this, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, as it is unknown which particle of food contains the barakah. Sayyidina Irbad ibn Sariya radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will fill the belly of the person in this world and in the hereafter who cleans the utensil and licks his fingers after eating. You'll find in certain cultures, I'm not going to mention, but I'm sure you'll probably know that it's actually frowned upon to clean the utensil. Certain cultures, certain religions, they don't. So what they do is whatever the leftover is, they'll give it to an animal, they'll throw it or something like that. But to completely clean the plate is considered as a low caste thing, a practice of the low caste. But what does logic tell us? What does human logic will tell us that that to finish the food is the more ideal thing to do. If someone, I've actually seen this in that where that if you clean, they'll look down upon you. They find it's to leave the leftovers onto the plate is the practices of low caste people. So, but look how our Habib Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is instructing us that to clean the plate. And and why he mentioned the barakah is just an incentive. Because as humans, we look for incentive in anything. Where there's benefit, we will go there. So Rasulullah mentioned this benefit so that we implement this sunnah, at least with the intention of gaining barakah. Asim radiallahu ta'ala anha relates that they were once eating when Sayyidina Nubaysha radiallahu ta'ala anhu, slave of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, entered. He related that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, if a person eats from a plate and cleans it, the plate will supplicate to Allah ta'ala for his forgiveness. The plate will supplicate, make dua for that person for his forgiveness because he fulfilled the right of the meal. And this is actually a known recorded hadith. It's in both Tirmidhi and Sunan ibn Majah, two hadith, books of hadith which are regarded as authentic. Sayyidina Nubaysha radiallahu ta'ala relates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, the utensil of the person who cleans it thoroughly supplicates for him, saying, "O Allah, save him from the fire of Jahannam as he saved me from shaitan." O Allah, save me from the fire of Jahannam as he saved me from shaitan. Such a simple practice, yet the dua is so great. So the cleaning of the plate, if the narration doesn't come on, because I've not, while I was revising this narration didn't come, but in one narration it's mentioned that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to clean the plate so thoroughly that it did not require washing. That's how clean it would. So he would literally wipe up every residue. That's what you call the proper method of cleaning. Sayyidina Ka'b radiallahu ta'ala narrates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to eat with 3 fingers and he used to lick his fingers before washing and wiping them. The sunnah method of licking one's finger. Certain narrations indicate that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to lick the fingers in the following order. First, the middle finger, then the index finger, and lastly the thumb. And this is backed with a narration that Imam Tabrani rahimahullah ta'ala quotes that Sayyidina Ka'b ibn Ujra anhu, who was a Sahabi, who said, I saw Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam eating with 3 fingers, which were the thumb, the index and middle finger. Thereafter I saw him licking them in the following sequence: the middle finger, the index finger, and lastly the thumb. I'm going to go over a few narrations and then I'm going to make a commentary on this. Eating with 3 fingers is a sunnah. Sayyidina Ka'b ibn Malik radiallahu ta'ala narrates, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to eat using 3 fingers only. Sayyid ibn Mansur radiallahu ta'ala, rahimahullah ta'ala, has narrated a mursal hadith which affirms that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam at times ate using all 5 fingers. So this is depending upon the type of food it is. Now obviously if you're having bread, then you can eat with 3 fingers, like roti, chapati, naan, bread, then it's easy to. But if you're having something like rice, it's quite difficult to grasp the food with just 3 fingers. So in those instances, to use a 4th finger or a 5th finger is permissible. It depends on the food that is presented before you. So both are thabit, both are recorded. That obviously when Prophet ﷺ, if he had something other than bread or required, so he used more fingers. So don't just assume. A lot of people just, you see that, oh, so Rasulullah ﷺ only ate with 3 fingers, and they're going through great difficulty trying to grasp the morsels of rice. Don't go through that difficulty, because there's this narration where it mentions that Rasulullah also used more than 3 fingers. It depends on the food that is presented before you. And this is something often that we need to be very considerate of. Sometimes we overlook sunnah because of where we are, where we're sitting and things like that. Everything, we should try our best in everything that we use our hands to eat, our fingers to eat. Always certain dishes, like for example, if you're having a steak, it's going to be quite difficult to eat with the hand. So you use the knife, but in that instance, even use the fork with your right, cut with your left, so that at least you're directing the food into your mouth with the right hand. Certain food that requires, like spaghetti bolognese, is going to slip through your fingers. But pasta might be easy to eat with your hand. But if it's bolognese, it's just going to slide through, or noodles. So in those instances, although the ulama say the knife and forks are against the sunnah method, but obviously we're living at a time, if you can avoid those type of dishes, then mashallah, the level of taqwa is there. It's not haram. But at the same time, it's how particular we want to be with regards to the sunnah as well. So again, but Islam understands these things as well, that obviously like a steak, unless you want to like literally tear it with your mouth, which is it is a sunnah. The narrations will come in the leading how Rasulullah used to eat meat. We'll cover that. But yes, depending on the food, the fingers, the number of fingers that are used, it can be permissible to use more than 3. Prohibition of eating with 1 finger only. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala narrates that Shaitan eats with 1 finger, arrogant people with 2, and the Anbiya, the Prophets alayhimus salam, eat with 3. And it's going to be very difficult eating with 1 finger. The only thing I could come to the conclusion is, like, when you dip your finger into something and licking like that. So, but again, the narration has been there, put under this chapter, just by way of reminder. The next is something that we should be very particular about: eating a fallen morsel. Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik narrates that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if a morsel falls down, clean it and eat it, and do not leave it for shaitan. If a morsel of food falls down, clean it and eat it, and do not leave it for shaitan. Generally what happens is people we feel intimidated or embarrassed. Food has fallen. But if we're eating and if the food directly falls from the plate or from our hands, then we should pick it up and eat it. That's why the importance of having a sufra, and we clean it before and after we use it, and that so that the food does not get stained or dirty and things like that. I just remember the narration. You must have heard different variations of it, but the one that is more authentic was, there was a Sahabi by the name of Ma'akil ibn Yasar, and what happened was they were dining with elites. There were non-Arabs, and they were dining with elites. So a morsel of food fell on the sufra, on the dastahan, on the cloth. So one of his companions said to him that, are you just going to pick up a food like this in front of all these people and just pick it up from the floor and eat it? And he replied that, should I disregard the sunnah of my Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam because of these non-Muslims? Look how particular they were. They didn't care who they were sitting. This is how particular they were with sunnah. That they weren't willing to, they didn't bother that they're sitting amongst the elite. But when it came to the sunnah, they implemented it. This is why the Sahaba got such a high level. Their love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, another point to be taken into consideration, that if the food sort of falls from our mouth after putting it out, then we shouldn't pick that up. If it's like sort of dropped from our hands or the plate, then it's. But if it's food that's gone into our mouth, then it's dropped onto the floor. The ulama said that we should not pick that food up. Just put it on the the quarter plates or the sufra. Wiping the hands instead of washing them after meals is also a sunnah. Sayyidina Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu ta'ala narrates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, do not wipe or wash your hands after meals unless you have licked them already. So obviously, because we've also already covered that, because the residue of barakah will be there, and the barakah will be in that residue of the food. But again here, why the wiping is mentioned, because depend again what sort of food we're eating. During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they often had dry food, or they had, you'll see in the next narration, that the Sahaba used to wipe their hands and forearms and their feet after eating food. That was because the food that they used to eat, compared to the food that we eat now, is a lot more different. It was more natural. Today we have so much additives and things like that, and obviously we have so much spice. Their food was mainly natural, using oils and natural fats. So those natural fats weren't tampered with additives, it was in its original form. So what they used to eat, well, for example, it was a meat or something like that, or the oil was in its sort of natural form. It wasn't heavily spiced or seasoned or anything. So what they used to do is, with that oil, because they were in a country or part of the world where it was very hot and all that, to moisturize their hands and feet, while that oil that was still in its natural form, they used to just sort of rub their hands together, or rub their soles of the feet. Obviously today, if you're eating curry, don't do that, because then you're going to have masala all over your feet and everything. But that was because the food that they used to eat that time was more basic and more simple. But the better method is to wash the hands, especially in our case, because the food that we're eating. Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala writes that to wash the hands is preferable and encouraged. A hadith narrated in Sunnah in Abi Dawud contains the following: whoever receives any harm except as a result of like insects biting or something like that on their skin, due to not washing and cleaning the stickiness or the residue that remains on the hands after eating, has no one to blame but himself. This is actually in Sunan Abu Dawud. It's a authentic hadith. So the ideal situation is to wash our hands. To wash our hands before meals, wash our hands after meals. And the actual sunnah method is to wash both hands. Although we're eating with our right hand, it's sunnah to wash both hands as well. Because often what will happen, for example, there might be bread, there might be rice, there might be different items. You might need to tear the food. Even though we're not using that left hand to eat, it's sunnah to wash both hands. Even if you're going to use one. So use that. A lot of people don't know this. Next heading, using a tablecloth is a sunnah. You know what we say is dastakhan in our Indian subcontinent, or the sufra in the Arabic language. This is the actual sunnah method of dining. Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik radiallahu ta'ala said, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam never ate from a bowl, nor did he sit at a table and eat. He was asked, what did Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam eat upon? He replied, a tablecloth. So like you'll see, in the masjid when we eat, or here, when you guys have your iftar or meals, we put out the dining cloth. That is the actual sunnah. And to sit on the tables, the Rasulullah disliked it because it was the custom of the haughty and elite people. And Rasulullah was a character of humbleness. That's why he did not dine on the table. He would always eat on the floor, because it's the method of humbleness. And also, you find research will also prove that dining on the floor and eating, it also makes a person eat less as well. Whereas you're sitting on a table in a relaxed, sitting on a chair and using the table, if you're in a relaxed point, limbs are relaxed, you tend to eat more. And Rasulullah SAW used to encourage us to control our food intake. In certain narrations, it's also mentioned that Rasulullah ﷺ's dining cloth was circular. Again, that's not important that we have to have. It could be in a rectangle or whichever shape we have. But it's just certain points are mentioned. The heavenly tablecloth that descended upon Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam was made of red leather. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah narrates that a person once presented food to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said to him, put it on the floor on a straw mat. So this is obviously narrations mentioning that different types of mats. So those days they used to also use leather, like cowhide or something like that. But often the straw mats were also used. So these are narrations that recorded the different types of mats that were used, or cloths that were used, so that we can relate to it. Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik narrates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam never sat at a table. Again, it's not haram. It's just the etiquette of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and we should try to implement this as well. You know, these things that we so often overlook. These are those very things that may be the reason for our pardoning on the day of Judgment. You know, on the day of Judgment, people will be running around looking for one ajr, just to be pardoned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or you find narrations that the inhabitants of Jannah will see their companions or associates. They're in a higher level of Jannah, and they will ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, how, you know, he was my friend, my associate, you know, we hanged out together and we chilled out together, but how does in how high level? It's because of one extra deed that person did. So these things that we overlook may be the means of our pardoning, and also may be the means, to say the very least, to elevate us in the levels of Jannah. So these are things that we should never overlook. You might just think, you know, this is one of the reasons why I started this book, was to eradicate that ideology of it's just Sunnah. This is such a abhorrent statement to make, only Sunnah. These are the blessed practices of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To lean against something whilst eating is contrary to the sacred Sunnah as well. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, do not lean or recline while eating. This is the practices it's because these are the practices of the non-Muslims. And also it creates laziness within us as well. You know, in another narrations, Rasulullah mentioned that not to lie down or belly down. You know, you see like the ancient Greeks, sometimes the sculptures are designed with a grape in the mouth or something like that. This is contrary to the Sunnah method. Just as a servant or a student humbles himself before his master or teacher, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam also humbled himself. This humility was clearly evident in the manner in which he ate and drank. Now it's discussing the narrations where it mentions how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sat. So there's three methods of sitting. Two are more famous, and there depends on these positions are utilized or depending on how we're eating or what sort of food we're eating, or given the circumstances. So the two Sunnah methods I'll show you so that we can have practical examples. One is that the right leg would be raised like this, and our backside would be resting on the sole of the left. So this is one of the common methods of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The other method is the squatting method, like this. So this method is not always utilized. This is in a case, for example, you're traveling and the surrounding is probably dirty and you have nowhere else to sit. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would often use that. So this is not all the time. You don't obviously squat. You might lose your balance. So this is like you implement these methods in accordance to circumstance. So the most common method is the right foot up, left down, like this, and the squatting position, just show you like this. So often, for example, you're drinking or just having light snacks or something like that, you can do this where you'd probably outside somewhere with some friends or something, and the floor you're doubtful and you got nothing to put down, just the squatting position like this. So you can eat like this as well. And the other method ulama mention is the normal tashahhud position. But those two are more common positions, but this is also the one that is disliked. It's not forbidden, is the cross-legged position, because then you're completely like the way I'm sitting right now to dine like this. Obviously, if someone's got like difficulties and they want to implement the sunnah as much as well, you can sit like this. It's just that because our limbs are more relaxed. But this method is not. But if someone's got, for example, knee pains, or they've got difficulty or old age or something like that, it's fine. It's not a problem. But so long as at least they're sitting down. So these are the three methods that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam implemented. Standing and eating is prohibited. Nowadays it's become a trend. You see even places like small little food outlets, they won't have seating space. They'll have just a table there. This is against sunnah. To eat in any circumstance standing is against sunnah. Drinking, there are narrations. Odd narrations, will cover them when the time comes. But eating completely is against sunnah. To stand and eat, it's completely disliked. This is why I'm revising this, because you never see nowadays people reprimanding others or forbidding. When we were young, I remember that our elders in our family or something, when we used to stand up and they say, "Why are you eating like shaitan for?" They used to say this. I've not heard this statement in a long time. Our elders used to say that to us. And this is why I started this book. Even the past week, so many people contact me saying, "MashaAllah, I learned something new and all." And you think this is basic stuff. We teach the children in the makatib and the madaris. Even one sister said, she assumed that this is going to be seerah, the regular, cradle to grave style, but it's actually practicing the sunnah. And she was happy. She's saying that it's actually more beneficial in the manner that we understand the benefits of sunnah as well. So this is the reason why I started this book. We've got a couple of more narrations and then we'll finish there. I just wanted to finish this chapter. How we're doing for time? All right, we'll just whiz through these narrations, inshallah. Next one, subheading is prohibiting of eating in shopping centers, meaning that eating out. It's not something that is haram and all that. It was just that it wasn't the practices of a Muslim and like, for example, in this narration, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that eating in shopping centers is disliked. It's because it's not the normal practice. Again, it's not haram. I like to go out eat in restaurants. I'm sure like any other person. It's just that one of the reasons ulama mention here, actually, it just says that eating out is a trend that has been adopted from the non-Muslims. Muslims should discard the practice because such food is deprived from many blessings and its nutritional value and hygienic standards are matters of concern. And I'm sure you can relate to this. You don't know what's happening behind the kitchen doors in a restaurant. How hygienic they are after washing the hands and things like that. These things affect our spirituality as well. Even I remember our ulama say why they avoid eating restaurants, and I'm sure those who've worked in catering environments, one staff member will get angry with another staff member, so then they start cursing each other, swearing at each other, and shouting at each other. That affects as well. Look how particular the ulama go, because the food is being prepared in an environment where swearing, cursing is taking place. That spiritually affects the food. Other reasons they say that because music is playing around in that environment, and that also affects the food. Look how this is how again, it's not haram, right? It's just to get that level of taqwa within ourselves. That's why you'll find many people, they won't dine in restaurants. That's their level of piety, obviously, because they're particular of what food goes into their systems, because that also affects their behavior as well and their spirituality. Removing one's shoe and eating. Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik narrates, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if food is offered to anyone whilst he is wearing his shoes, he should remove them, as this is more comforting to the feet. These are some of the things are logical as well. Obviously, this is obviously because they're eating on the floor, and to have your shoes on as well is impractical. But Rasulullah was very particular with the instructions he would give. He would say, oh, it's common sense. But yes, some people are very simpleton-minded and all that. And there were the Bedouins in the time of Rasulullah, they were complete simpletons. Rasulullah had to give them particular instructions. Next one is something that is very important as well. Prohibition of eating piping hot food. We're living in a time, in fact, I've heard so many times, you go to a restaurant or something, and the customer is selling to the waiter, make sure it's piping hot, steaming, or else I will not take the food, I will return it. What does Islam say? Steaming food, hot food is void of barakah. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, allow the food to cool down, as steaming hot food is void of barakah. One of the other reasons ulama mentioned this is because it's makruh, in the sense because when it's hot food, you're gonna burn yourself, your hands or your tongue, and then what will happen, naturally the food, you'll spit it out or something like that. So letting the food cool down. Obviously when you're prepping the food, you cook it in hot, depending on the temperature that is necessary to prep the food. But when it comes to dining and consuming the food, let the food cool down. In one narration it mentions, whenever hot tharid was a type of dish, how do you describe it? So it was torn up bread that was soaked in some sort of soup, curry-like dish. So think of it like a bread version of a biryani or something like that. That's the best way. So what Rasulullah would do, or the Sahaba, because they would tear up the bread and the curry or the soup or whatever it was put over it and it was soaked. So that was a dish of called sarid. So sometimes just to act, whenever you can, just to act upon the sunnah of eating sarid, do it next time you're eating bread or something, rip it up onto your plate and just pour the curry or soup, whatever the dish is, on top of it, so that at least you can say that we implemented this sunnah. So Sayyidah Aisha, whenever hot sarid was presented to Sayyidah Asma, radiallahu ta'ala anha, she would instruct that it be covered and left for a while. She would only eat it after the steam had vanished, saying that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that cooler food is abundant in barakah. Impermissibility of blowing into food. This is makruh. For obvious reasons as well. When you're blowing into food, residues of your saliva will go there as well. Especially when you're sharing with somebody, don't blow the food up, because I'm sure they don't want your barakati breath on that food as well. So it's just like common sense. Like sometimes a person blows and residues of saliva goes. Sometimes, you blow, they don't want to. So look how particular Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is given in instruction. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam never breathed into a vessel nor blew into it. Even when we're drinking, you see sometimes the people are drinking and they can see the cup from the inside, it starts steaming up, it's breathing into it. Again sunnah. And also it doesn't look nice as well, it's so onlookers as well. It's being polite and courteous. Sayyidina Salim radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam forbade eating whilst lying on one's stomach. How would we do? Actually, we'll just. What time's Azan, Abdurrahman? Keep going.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, that's fine.
It's at 1:30, so choose whatever you want.
Okay, that's fine. Impermissibility, do not skip the evening meal. Sayyidina Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu ta'ala anhuma narrates, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, never omit the evening meal, even if you have to eat a handful of dates, as omitting the evening meal speeds up old age. This is recorded in Tirmidhi. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam encouraging us to eat the evening meal. So again, people do the intermittent fasting, again something that is taken from sunnah. So to skip the lunch, you can do so if anyone's particular about doing intermittent fasting, but the evening meal, Rasulullah strongly encouraged it. Examining the food or the quality of the food. Why this is mentioned, as this hadith says, that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam examined the dates to extract any insects which may have maybe in them. So sometimes old dates you'll find, especially sometimes you get them fresh from the farms when you go to near the dates farm, when Allah will take you, brothers who haven't been to Hajj and Umrah. There are a lot of people, we prefer go to the farm near Uhud. We get a bit more cheaper rate, and you get to pick your dates as well. Often you'll find insects in it. So Rasulullah used to examine those in case there's, and because as the dates would age, insects will infest them. So this is something that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam instructed. Also, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam instructed not to criticize or no praising of the food. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala narrates, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam never criticized food. If he felt hungry, he would eat the food. If he disliked it, he would abstain from it. Never complain about food. Why? Because that's disrespecting to the food, disrespectful towards the cook as well. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam would never overpraise as well the food. Praising food shows one's attachment to it, which is inappropriate, and criticizing it shows one's ingratitude to the bounty of Allah Ta'ala, which is wrong. And praising the cook is not forbidden. So you can go praise the cook, mashallah, you cooked very nice, but be careful as well. So you don't want to overpraise him, that out of fear of pride. There's an incident that I just remembered. One scholar narrated it. I don't know if it's a fable or is just an actual incident, but there was a man who was in a talk like this in a masjid, and the scholar, the khatib, was saying that we men are so ungrateful towards our women. We never show thanks or show gratitude to them whenever they cook food. So this man is thinking that, oh, do you know what, that's right, I never thanked my wife ever. She cooks for me day in, day out, I never thanked her. So that day he goes, do you know, I'm going to go tonight, I'm going to cook whatever she's cooked for me, I'm going to go and compliment the food. So he ate, and he's like, mashallah, today's food is fantastic. And his wife just went across her head. And she said, I've been cooking for you for years. Not one day you complimented me. Today the neighbor sent in food and you're doing tarif and complimenting the food. So be careful. Again, it could be a fable or it could be a true incident, Allahu alam, but I heard a scholar saying it and I just remembered it.
I've heard it as well.
Yeah, it is a famous incident. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was fond of the food at the bottom of the pot. This was because of his humbleness, his humility. And often, obviously, the residue does taste nice as well. Sayyidina Anas radiallahu ta'ala narrates that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam liked the food that remained at the bottom of the pot. So what he would do is basically extract that out. It's just expression of his humility as well. And there's muhaddiseen have explained two reasons for this. The hadith depicts Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam's humility. He always fed the best portion of the food to others and ate the leftover himself. And generally the food at the bottom of the pot is closest to the heat, hence its fat content is minimal as well. So there's also dietary benefits as well. Sleeping after meals is prohibited. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Mu'mineen narrates this hadith, Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that make the digestion process simpler by engaging in zikr or salah after meals. Do not sleep after meals, as it creates spiritual hard-heartedness. So immediately after feel, and that's something logical, also health and benefits as well. Though we hear today that sometimes to walk a few steps or something like that, but to sleep immediately is forbidden. Now the next narration, Rasulullah mentions even with flossing teeth. Today the dentists encourage it. They look at these things, flossing teeth and things like that, all extracted from Sunnah. But today the dentist, what do they encourage you? They give you those. Now, before they used to have those thread things, now they have those brush-like devices they give you. It's all extracted from the life of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Look, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, floss the teeth and gargle the mouth after eating, as this is beneficial for the teeth and the jaws. All these habits that the West has implemented, all taken from the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The next narrations, I'm just going to go over without mentioning that just mentioning the interpretation of the hadith. The next hadith mentioned that when we should take away the tablecloth, and the tablecloth, it should be taken up before getting up from completely, because this is respect to the food and respecting the dining cloth as well. That Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam prevented them from getting up before the tablecloth was taken away. Another reason is also sometimes people are slow eaters. So if you're getting up and then the brother next to us, he's a slow eater, he's probably got a better appetite than us, and he might feel, oh man, everyone else is finished and I need to get up, and he's not full now. Look how considerate Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was about this. So you sit down with everybody until the last person is finished, and then everyone's finished, you get up. Because it's natural, some people have bigger appetite. Sometimes you see, that a person is very slim in figure, but they eat more than a person who's bigger in size. Sometimes you see women have a bigger appetite than men. So you don't, look how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was considerate about a person's feelings, even in this situation. This one, wallahi, I get so angry when I see this a lot in the masjid. Being inconsiderate when eating. A lot of the time I see, in our masjid, iftar time, there's about 300, 400 people eating. And then you'll see a person there just filling his plate up from the bowl and taking all the meat out, and then he's just leaving the soup. That is so inconsiderate. Very inconsiderate. You have to see that you don't know how much food is coming in and how many people need to eat. And I've seen so many people that is just piling up the plate with the meat, and then the next person who's waiting for the food, he's just left with soup. This is not the akhlaq and nature of a character of a believer. This is something very inconsiderate, and it's greedy, it's bad. And this is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the previous narration, that he would give out the food and eat. This is a sign of humbleness. This is the characters that we should implement in our life. Sayyidina Jabir ibn Abdullah mentions, radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, one day I was sitting in the shade of my home. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed by and he asked me to accompany him. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam held my hand, and along we went until we reached the home of one of his wives. And the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam entered and requested permission for me to enter also. The wife of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was concealed behind a veil. He then inquired if there was anything to eat, and she radiyallahu ta'ala anha replied that there was 3 slices of bread. This was placed on the table cloth. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam took the first one and placed it in front of himself. He then placed the second one before me, and he took the third one, broke it into 2, and placed half before each of us. So this is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam showing practical examples. Cleaning the tablecloth before taking away. Umm al-Mu'mineen Sayyidah Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala narrates that the tablecloth was never taken away from in front of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam while it contained particles of food. So before we pay up, cleaning up the sufra is very important as well. This is again personal hygiene as well. Who should commence eating first? Sayyidina Jabir ibn Abdullah radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma narrates, and whenever they ate with Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they also waited for him to commence eating before they did. This is again sign of respect. So if you're dining at home, you got elderlies, people, your parents, grandparents, uncle or something like that. Look, this is adab, respect. Today these are dying traits. That's why we're going through this thing, this kitab. So we implement this so you can tell, if someone does it at home, your younger sibling or something like that, or your child, and your parents are there or their grandparents are there or something like that, better don't do this. Teaching, this is how we implement, we teach one another. Inshallah, we'll just leave it there, sorry, with brevity of time. Any questions quickly? Sorry.